Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory with great warranties. Great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. And a service department second to none that keeps the life of your vehicle, keeps it rolling, keeps it in great shape. Takes care of difficult, takes care of routine. It's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf. Online at sunburymotors.com. Scott Lauber in a moment, but first, our play-by-play call of the day.
It's the pass. Return feed, Malkin. Hit, try, Crosby goes wide. He wins the race, though. Worked it over to Letang. Now Malkin. Gensel open. Malkin to Letang. Letang drive. He scores! He scores! Chris Letang has brought this house down. It is his night, and the Pens win it.
Back in the lineup, getting it done, and Beersy with the call last night on the Penguins TV network. All right. Was it fun for you, Matt, to listen to real hockey? No, I'm just kidding.
Fun yet very frustrating. How about that? Although the Flyers haven't been that bad this year at times.
I grew up a Bruins fan, so I grew up in Bobby Orr's era. So that was fun. All right. Let's bring in Scott Lauber, Philadelphia Inquirer. Scott, how have you been, first of all?
I've been well, Steve. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for asking. Appreciate that. So Scott Rolen gets in. Defensively, I don't think there's any argument with him at all. As a defensive third baseman, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much without peer during his era, for sure. He won 8 Gold Gloves, and you don't need to know that he was at the top of the class defensively. You know, all you had to do was watch him. He was pretty acrobatic over there. He played third base with kind of with a flair. You know, I think he talked about it last night on one of his Zoom calls after the election. He talked about, you know, his approach, that he wanted to tackle everything that was hit to him. You know, that's the word he used. He wanted to tackle the ball, and he was very, as I said, very acrobatic. He was he did some things over there that you don't normally see from a normal third baseman. And I'm not old enough to have seen Brooks Robinson. I did see. Yeah. I did see Mike Schmidt a bit in his career, especially in the toward the end of it. And he was obviously a terrific defensive third baseman, one of the best ever. You know, Rolen is not quite Mike Schmidt. He's not quite Brooks Robinson, but, you know, he is right there. He is a notch below them and several notches above most. So, yeah, I agree with you. Defensively, there was no doubt. And I voted for him for the last 5 years because I felt like there was enough offense there, especially at that position. I viewed him as a two-way player. I viewed him as a guy who excelled on both sides of the ball. And, to me, those are people that you put in the Hall of Fame.
And there's also another element, too. And I know Terry Francona talked about this. He said, look, the guy had a range of a shortstop at third base, that is remarkable to find in any era.
Yeah, he sure did. And, I've heard Tito talk about that as well. And you go through the game and, you talk to people and, like, I think some people think that we just get the, voters, we just get the ballot every year and we just sit there and we check the boxes and mail it back and fill it out. And, it's pretty routine. Well, I know for a lot of us, we talk to a lot of people that we know in the game and, especially when the ballot comes, when you have the opportunity to talk to someone that you know in the game who had experience with a particular player, you tend to ask. And, when I decided to vote for Rolen, I didn't vote for him his first year on the ballot. I'm not sure why. I'd have to look back to see how many people I voted for that year. When he first came on the ballot in 2018, it was still a fairly crowded ballot. We were still, I think, as a body, we were electing a lot of people every year, and you're held to that that maximum of 10 thing by the Hall of Fame. And so they might have been a product of that, but I jumped on the Rolen bandwagon in his second year, and I've been on it ever since. And I've talked to people along the way, and one of the reasons I came to voting for him was just talking to people like Terry Francona, who were around him back in, at the beginning in the Philly days, and then through the Cardinal years and whatnot, and just talking to people about, like, what do you think? Do you think this guy's a Hall of Famer? And I had enough people tell me that, they regarded him that way. It was interesting to watch his rise from 10.4% in his first year to just over 75% this year. That's a pretty meteoric climb, and I think I heard somebody say or read something yesterday that it was the fastest that anyone has gone from such a low percentage in year one to getting elected, and that's pretty remarkable when you think about it. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that the way we vote has changed, the ballot has thinned out a little bit. And also, I think that a lot of people like me have talked to a lot of people in the game who have said, you might want to take a harder look at Scott Rolen, because what he did, not just defensively but offensively as well, at a position that is underrepresented in the Hall of Fame, only 18th third baseman in the Hall of Fame. He certainly qualifies in the top percentile of great third basemen in the game's history.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know the number of times I've had Hall of Fame voters come into the broadcast booth in football to ask Jack Ham his opinion on somebody they were considering from his era. I mean, so I know exactly what you're talking about, Scott. I've been the fly on the wall, the bystander, just sitting there fascinated listening to it. So it's always fun. Now, can you reveal the other names you voted for on there? Because everybody has different rules. Can you do that now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've put it out on Twitter, my ballot. So yeah, no, I'd be happy to talk about it. I voted for 5 people this year. I voted for Scott Rolen, Todd Helton, Billy Wagner, Gary Sheffield, and Carlos Beltran. So those are my 5.
They all make sense.
I'll say that I gave a really, really hard look at 3 others: Andrew Jones, Jimmy Rollins, and Jeff Kent, and decided not to check their names just for various reasons. I haven't been able to get there yet on Rollins or Andrew Jones. And Kent is someone, I'll be honest with you, this was his 10th and final year, and in the 2 weeks or 3 weeks that have gone by since the ballots were due, I've wondered whether I'm going to regret not voting for Jeff Kent down the road, because as I've started already to give thought to next year, Chase Utley comes on the ballot next year, and I covered a lot of Chase Utley's prime, and my gut feeling in covering him all those years was that I was watching a Hall of Famer, and I've started to think to myself, boy, if you didn't vote for Jeff Kent, how are you going to justify voting for Chase Utley? So I haven't made up my mind completely on Utley yet. We have 11 more months to kind of kick it around, and as I said, ask people and talk to people and get others' opinions. But as somebody who was a no voter on Kent for I guess just the eye test and feeling like I couldn't quite get there, I am going to have a hard time kind of reconciling why Utley if I decide yes on Chase Utley. So those are really tough calls, and it's a tough ballot. These are tough decisions, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that I think a lot of us put a lot of thought into it every year and take it quite seriously. So, it's something that you kick around and you wonder, are we doing the right thing with a lot of these names? And and whatnot. And it's really a testament, I think, to the Hall itself that it sparks so much debate every year. I think that's a great thing.
At any point during his time on the ballot, did you vote for Jeff Kent?
I did not.
Okay.
This is my 8th year, so he's been on the ballot every year that I have voted.
Right.
I'll tell you a quick story. So years and years and years ago, I was covering minor league baseball in upstate New York, and Gary Carter was working in the Mets organization at the time as a minor league roving instructor. He'd go around to all the different affiliates, and he came through town, and I got to know him a little bit, and I forget how many years it took him to get in, but it took quite a few, and I was not a voter yet. I was not even close to being a voter yet, and he asked me one day, he said, I have a question for you. He said, how come, I retired, X amount of years ago, and I've been on the ballot for X amount of years, and my numbers have not changed in all of that time. And yet every year my percentage changes. I go up, I go down, I stay, whatever it is, and they tell me I'm getting closer, but I'm not doing anything to enhance my candidacy. And I had to explain to him that, every single year the electorate changes a little bit. Like new people come into the process, and people are weeded out because they haven't covered the game in quite a while, so they lose their vote. So in some ways the voting body changes, but also people get a chance, I think, through this process to reevaluate a candidate. And so if you've been a no on somebody for a while, maybe you have a conversation with someone and they bring up something that really resonates with you, and it makes you rethink that. And I said, if I ever become a voter, I said the one thing that I don't ever want to do is once I decide yes on someone, I never want to say the next year no. Right. So, I'm more likely to look at a candidate and say, nope, not ready yet, and then rethink it and maybe check them the next year, rather than, rush into it and then say to myself, well, I really regret that vote and I don't want to vote for that guy. And in some ways I've done that with someone like Jimmy Rollins. I get a lot of heat whenever I release a ballot every year. Like, how can you covered Jimmy Rollins when he was, at the prime of his career. How could you not think he's a Hall of Famer? And I'd rather not rush into that check mark. So I may come around on him, but I never wanted to be the guy who checks somebody and says yes and then rescinds the vote. To me, you make up your mind that someone's a Hall of Famer, and unless something extraordinary happens, like they wind up in jail for something or whatever it is, you don't ever want to remove that check mark.
What role has the PED era played in your thought process on your ballot?
Yeah, it's played a role. I mean, I was a yes voter on bond. So I should say my first year as a voter, I think it was 2016. It's been 8 years. That was really the first thing I had to decide. Like, how am I going to treat the PED guys, either the guys who we suspect or guys who I don't think yet at that point we had anybody on the ballot who had tested positive. Right. Now we do with A-Rod and with Manny Ramirez. But yes. And my thing was basically that if you were associated with PEDs prior to testing, prior to 2004, I was going to judge you on your merits as a player. Gotcha. So I was a yes voter on Bonds and a yes voter on Clemens because to me they were Hall of Famers before any of the reporting of when they started to do whatever it was they did. And then, as the years went by and we started to get first Manny Ramirez and then Alex Rodriguez, my stance on them from the start has been if you tested positive during testing, that was something I wasn't going to forgive. That to me was going to be a disqualifier. So I have not yet voted for them, for the two of them. Again, I may come around eventually, but to me, if you tested positive after the league said you can't do this, you're kind of thumbing your nose at the whole thing, and it's almost offensive to me that you would test positive after being told like this is a line you can no longer cross. So I've looked at the candidates in those sort of terms over time, and that's sort of how I've tried to be consistent with it.
I completely agree with that. Because if baseball did not have a rule in, then how can you then judge on a rule that doesn't exist? Now, when the rule comes in, now you can judge because they are breaking the rules at that point. Now, maybe they're breaking some sort of code somebody has before that, but there was no rule. And now there is.
Yeah.
It's put in there. I think that's a logical line to put in place.
Yeah, no question. No question. And I have friends just in life, not in baseball, who, they'll ask you, every year, like, what'd you do about the Hall of Fame? And invariably, you always get into the steroid conversation. Mm-hmm. And back when Bonds and Clemens were on the ballot and I was voting for them, I had people in my life who were like, how could you vote for cheaters? They cheated the game. And, I say, well, yeah, I mean, maybe so, but like it was not cheating at that time because you were not told explicitly you can't do this. If anything, baseball just sort of like looked the other way if there were suspicions of people doing things. And then once you laid down the law and you said, okay, we're going to test you, and if you test positive, you're going to get suspended, then you're cheating. Then you did something that you're not allowed to do. And we can debate the ethics of it. I mean, certainly, anyone who used PEDs prior to testing, morally and ethically, were doing something corrupt, right? Not if not like by the letter of the law in the sport. But there are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame who it's not the Hall of Saints, right? Like there are a lot of people in the Hall of Fame who were not great people. And so I never really felt like I was going to judge their morality. I was going to judge what they did on the field. But if you broke that rule, if you after everything baseball had been through, and then they put in testing, and you still had the audacity to do it, to me that's impossible to overlook.
Right, exactly. I agree with that stance. I think that if you're going to draw a line, that's the line I think you have to draw. I mean, because it's only logical. Hey, that's how I feel about it. Back to Rolen for a moment. Enough of a hitter for you in his career?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've heard a lot the last little bit about, we've changed how we vote, and there's no question. I think we have access now to stats that enable us to judge players and evaluate players in ways that we couldn't, quite frankly, when many of them played. When Scott Rolen played, we didn't talk about WAR, and we didn't talk about, OPS plus, and we didn't talk about, half the things that we talk about now in terms of how we judge players. And, and so those were not goals of somebody like Scott Rolen, to pile up WAR and things like that. And so maybe now we look at stats that we did not always look at, and you've got sort of sabermetric candidates versus traditional counting stat candidates. Chase Utley, for example, I think is going to do very well in the community of voters who are sort of new school sabermetric voters, whereas Jimmy Rollins, I think, does better with voters who put value in the old-fashioned counting stats, like, boy, this guy is the franchise leader for the Phillies in hits, and things like that. So I just think, you put it all in a hopper and you sort of like try to look at as much of it as you possibly can, and Rolen checks a lot of the boxes that you look at. And again, I think you also weigh how they stacked up positionally at the position that they played. And for third baseman, he's way up there in terms of where he ranks in the counting stats, in the sabermetric stats for third baseman. So that's kind of one of the main things I looked at when I came around to voting for him in his second year on the ballot. I said, well, the defense is one thing. We could see it with our eyes. We could measure it in terms of gold gloves and things like that. We can talk to peers and how they felt about it. Now, how do you feel about him as a hitter? And a lot of people I talked to were like, look, for his era, for his position, he was in the top. He was in the top, 1.5%. So that's really what you're looking for when you're talking about the Hall of Fame. And so there was enough of that there to me. And that's the argument for someone like Andrew Jones. It's one of the reasons I wrestle with him every year. There's that combination of offense and defense that defensively, he was one of the best center fielders ever. Did he do enough offensively, and did he do it enough for long enough? And, Andrew Jones has a very good argument for that. I think Rolen had one as well. So I think ultimately that's one of the reasons why you saw his percentage increase over the years, was that people came around to the fact that not only was he an elite defender, but at least for his position and during the era that he played, he was an elite offensive third baseman as well.
I'm steal one more from you. By Andrew Jones, by the way, 5 Gold Gloves, over 400 home runs, so I know what you're talking about. One more. I want to steal one more question. Does personality ever enter into this? Because you have to go down and talk to these people all the time. And let's face it, some are great, some are forthcoming, some are innocent, and some are jerks. Okay? Because it's a cross section of life. Does that ever enter into your mind when you're thinking about somebody?
I try not to. I mean, look, we're all human,
Yeah.
And certainly, as you said, you come across people in life that you like more than others. And the job we do is very much about relationship building and getting to know people. And, I certainly appreciate when somebody returns my phone call versus when they don't. I certainly appreciate it when they give me time at their locker versus when they don't. And I know a lot of players, and you hear a lot of players talk about it, and they think, well, is it a popularity contest? Was I nice enough during my time? Did I, as a player, did I give of my time? Was I cooperative? Will they hold it against me if I wasn't? And so we're all human. But that said, I try not to let that impact me whatsoever. I mean, I voted for Curt Schilling. I don't agree with a lot of what Curt Schilling says, especially almost all of what Curt Schilling says, especially in his post-retirement years and some of the things that he puts out on social media. I disagree with 99.99999% of it. And yet I voted for him every year because, I felt like he was worthy as a pitcher. I covered Jimmy Rollins. I very much enjoyed dealing with Jimmy Rollins when he was a player. I enjoy dealing with him now. I haven't voted for him yet. Next year, David Wright comes on the ballot, the great New York Mets third baseman. I covered him in the minor leagues. He's one of my favorite players ever. And I think he's short of the Hall of Fame. It probably will pain me to not check his name. But, as it stands right now, I'm probably not going to. So, there are plenty, especially now that I've done this long enough and I've voted long enough, I'm getting into voting for players that I did cover and that I covered for a while. And so, of course, you think about it, but you try to separate it out and you try to evaluate the person, not as a person, but as a player and what they did on the field. I think most of us, I hope most of us are professional enough to be able to make that separation.
Right. I mean, it's something that comes up all the time in winter. I assume Adrian Beltre being on next year is going to have an influence too. So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, and I covered him for 1 year with the Red Sox in 2010. Yeah. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I was in
the ballpark the day he with Matt Suzuki on the mound. He had a grand slam and they went 4-3. So,
yeah,
I mean,
and
you were there. I was
there. The thing
there.
about it is, I'll vote for Adrian Beltre because he was one of the best third basemen that I've covered, independent of anything else. And people say, "Oh, did you get along with David Ortiz?" Yeah, I got along great with David Ortiz, but he got my vote because he was the best DH in history, not because he would give his time or whatever. So, of course, you're human, but you try to sort of you try to put that aside when it comes to making a decision like that.
I know this went long, but the answers were so good. I appreciate it. I think you gave everybody great insight into the thought process, and I thank you for that and for your time as always, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anytime. You know that.
Scott Lauber, Philadelphia Inquirer. That was fascinating.
That was really, really good.
Because you would vote all on personality. All right, we'll come back with your 2 criteria would be simple. Were they nice to me? And are they a Yankee? All right, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
No, senor! No, senor! No, senor!
Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
I could see Matt now with the Hall of Fame ballot. He's stupid. Guess we'll go with no on that one. Okay. Scott Brocious. Didn't he play for the Yankees? He's in. No, Scott Brocious, no. Adrian Beltre, Scott Brocious. He votes for Brocious. Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory with great warranties, great pre-owned inventory with that all-important Sunbury Motors guarantee, and a great service department, fabulous technicians. Getting it done as always. Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors, Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, online, sunburymotors.com.
At least I do my best not to put more than one person into the Hall of Fame class like this year yet again.
Get the lingerie on the deck. Call the janitor.
What did he voted for 5? You're allowed to vote for 10. I know
Yeah.
Tim Kirchin usually votes for 8 to 10. Some guys don't. You're still mad about the Derek Jeter thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's water under the bridge now. But yeah, that's just the remote example of how flawed this voting system is with the baseball writers and voting for the Hall of Fame. But Scott Lauber is not one of them. I can tell you that right now. Scott Lauber is not one of them.
He voted for Jeter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Only one guy didn't.
Yeah, which was a guy from the Boston Globe.
Okay. It's fine. The owner of the Boston Globe also owns the New York Times. What's the difference? You can vote for whomever you want.
Oh, yeah, it's his prerogative, but...
If he ended up at 74.9%, then you've got an argument. When you clear the barrier by 24.8%, it doesn't matter who didn't vote for you.
He has every right to not vote for Jeter, but that just tells me that he doesn't know the game of baseball. I don't care how long he's been covering the sport.
Well, there's a long list of players that are better than Jeter that are not unanimous either. Okay? Long list. Okay? Was Hank Aaron unanimous? Willie
No,
Mays,
but he should have been.
Willie Mays, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams. I mean, there's only been one unanimous. That's Mariano Rivera.
Correct.
He's the only one ever.
But my point is they all should have been. There's too much politicking and, this guy, it's not his time yet. Just vote for the guy. If he was a Hall of Famer, vote for the guy. Stop this wishy-washing back and forth of, he'll come to me. No, stop. If you're talking to people and doing actual research like Scott is, then I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But when you're just saying, I'm not quite ready yet, then stop it.
The one area I am not on board with is the war part of it. And I don't believe in it because it means nothing to me. I've got 2 eyes.
I agree with that, too.
Wait, let's see now. Who's better, him or him? Wait, do I need war to tell me that if Mike Trout's out of the lineup, the Angels are going to be worse? If you need a stat to tell you that, then you really shouldn't be there covering it. Okay? I've always felt like stuff like that is a bailout for people who don't have like Scott has a great feel for the game. So he's just looking for supporting stuff along the way. That's different. But people who use it and that's like their entire argument, I sit there and go, you have no feel for the game, do you? None. And the war thing is one of them. I sit there and go, well, come on. Can't you tell? You can't, if you can't tell, okay? I thought the interesting vote he had was the one for Sheffield.
I also agree with that.
And Sheffield's got the numbers. I mean, let's be honest. Sheffield has the numbers. And when you watch Sheffield play, and he'd come to the plate, you did fear him, right? I mean, he was with the Yankees. I mean, you feared him in the lineup.
And I loved him when he was with the Yankees.
You feared him, Penn State, by the way, always talk about on the court, field, ice, whatever it may be, pitch. But we always talk about the academic part. 27 different teams at Penn State, as a team, had a 3.0 grade point average this fall. 27 teams. The team GPA was 3.0.
There you go. Well done.
And the student athletes in total posted a 3.22 GPA. How about that? That's amazing. Women's lacrosse had the highest GPA among the 31 sports, 3.69. Women's gymnastics, 3.66. Women's swimming and diving, 3.66. Women's soccer team GPA was 3.64. Softball, 3.51. And men's hockey was 3.44.
Bingo!
That's terrific. That is terrific. Wow. Congratulations to all those teams. That is great. Brian Doyle. Why did you vote for him? Because he was a Yankee? I mean, really.
I just said Gary Sheffield was a Yankee, and I wouldn't vote for him. There we go. That's one.
If push came to shove and he was on the ballot, you'd vote for him. You would succumb. Yankee Nation would send you 2 emails, and that would be it. Okay, I'm getting overwhelmed. They sent you 2.
But didn't he also have some PED reports against him?
That's why I brought it up with him. Now,
okay, then that's another reason why I wouldn't put him on the ballot.
But again, same story. Where did he? Once they put the rule in, where did they? Did he ever test positive after they put the rule in?
Yeah, I'd have to look back. But for my stances on that, either way, I vote no.
Because that has been the argument on Gary Sheffield for years, that he was one of the quietly, let me see. Let's just look up Gary Sheffield here. Gary Sheffield. He does not speak highly of you. Wow. No, just kidding.
F-O-U-L-E-D, that spells fouled.
Currently, he's a sports agent. So he went 88 to 2009, 8 different teams. Brewers, Padres, Marlins, Dodgers, Braves, Yankees, Tigers, Mets. Said he enjoyed his Mets experience much more than the Yankees. I don't know what that means. So let's see. Retirement, did not play 2010. Let's see. Controversies. 86, arrested alongside his uncle, Dwight Gooden. And Vance Lovelace charged with resisting arrest, violence, and battery on a police officer. Pleaded no contest. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Stolen probation. DUI. This is not going well. Arrested being clocked in his Ferrari at 110 miles per hour on Interstate 4. Failed a breathalyzer. Ew. Red Sox fan leaned over the railing at Fenway Park, distracted Sheffield. He was going to field a ball hit by Jason Varitek. After Sheffield took a swing at him with his glove, he threw the ball back to the infield, then got into a verbal altercation with the fan. Fan interference not called. The result, a triple by Varitek. a fan, a longtime season ticket holder, not ejected, but he donated his remaining 2005 season tickets to charity in an effort to avoid any controversy for the remainder of the season. Sheffield was fined. Verbal about the need for sufficient financial compensation and respect, demanding better pay than he was getting with the Dodgers. Okay, well, that's fine. You demand that. Steroid, here we go. Steroid allegations. Here we go. This is the one you're talking about. During a workout with Barry Bonds, a cream was applied to Sheffield's knee by a trainer to help heal ripped stitches from knee surgery. Sheffield states in his book Inside Power that he had no knowledge of the cream containing steroids and had no reason to assume so at the time. He goes on to say in his book that the cream did nothing to strengthen his knee, and also states that a look at his numbers shows no improvement after the incident. He is named in the Mitchell report as one of the players who had obtained and used steroids. But again, the Mitchell report, let's see, in the book Game of Shadows, it alleges that Sheffield worked with and received steroids such as testosterone and human growth hormone from Barry Bonds' personal trainer, Greg Anderson. The book also details steroid calendars found in possession of Anderson outside numerous steroid clinics. But again, that's 2001, right? Right? So 2001, there is no rule on steroids at that point, which now goes to Scott Lauber's discussion that we had about steroids.
Right, so that was before the fact. So
right, so the Mitchell report. Remember the Mitchell report, which names like these guys may be in it, blah 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 blah. There is no policy. It's only the report saying that these guys may have been, but the Major League Baseball again has no policy on it until after the Mitchell report came out. So being named in it, to me, no offense, means nothing to me. I mean, Kirk Rodomsky, former bat boy, clubhouse employee of the Mets, critical witness, provided most of the names that the general public did not know about. Brian McNamee, personal trainer employed by Andy Pettitte, Roger Clemens, Chuck Knobloch. Larry Starr, trainer for 30 years with the Reds and the Florida Marlins. He was interviewed by Mitchell's investigators at least 4 times, but his information was entirely omitted in the final report. Interesting. Players listed. In all, 89 former and current Major League players are named in the report. Among those implicated were Roger Clemens, Andy Pettitte, Miguel Tejada, and Eric Gagne. Many of them were connected through a relatively small social network centering on that name, Kirk Rodomsky. This is where they then put together recommendations, and they use the recommendations to then to put together what the drug policy is now. Okay. So is named in there, but being named in there, again, that means nothing to me. Being named in there means nothing because Major League Baseball has no policy at that point. And I made that point about, and he's not a Hall of Famer, but I made that point about Mark McGwire when people talk about the record. I said, he's sitting there with the stuff right there in the locker. Why? Not trying to hide anything. There's no policy. Right? Now, we can sit here and we can argue, and you would have a good argument saying, that's cheating. That's what I got it. I understand that. Sheffield, by the way, hit 509 home runs. With the Yankees, he had 36, 34, and 6. With the Yankees, he made $33 million. How about that? You know how many World Series the Yankees won with Sheffield?
None, and that was part of the problem.
Well, I don't know. It's part of the problem. I'm just saying that if that's the case, then a lot of Yankees aren't making it. It's been 13 long years. Let me ask you, if he retired today, would you vote for Aaron Judge for the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Really?
Without a doubt.
If he retired today, you would vote for him for the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I would. The numbers are there already. I know he's got the injury issues, but...
Really? Like Jacob deGrom, I wouldn't even think about it.
I'm with you there.
I don't think, no offense, I don't think Judge has done enough. I really don't. I mean that with all sincerity. He's only played 7 years. I mean, he's got 220 career home runs. Doesn't have 500 runs knocked in yet. And he's a lifetime 211 postseason hitter. No, I couldn't do it. In fact, I wouldn't take it. Would be like, no, I can't do that because he's only played 7 years. And to be honest with you, half of his home runs are in 2 seasons. He's got 114 home runs between 2017 and 2022. He's got 114 of his 220 home runs. But he's also a 211 postseason hitter. That's not good. Ooh, he has 66 strikeouts. That's very impressive. In 44 games. He's averaging a strikeout and a half a game in the postseason. That's not good. Let me check his World Series stats. Still looking. Still looking. Still looking. He's attended the World Series, right?
Yes, and he was at the Knicks game last night.
Oh. See? I want to ask when's he going to attend a professional basketball game? All right.
Valid question.
All right. He's going to have to put up 5 more good years for me to get there. Like a level of consistency of because look, we all know his first couple of years he struggled. But there are guys that do struggle their first couple of years. I mean, Mike Schmidt struggled his first couple of years. Well, Mike Schmidt ended up playing 20 years and went from struggling to being awesome. But the problem Judge is going to have is that Judge is an older player. He's going to be 31 this year. And I think he's going to have to put together, let's be fair, 3 to 5 more really good years. How about that? See, the difference is I try not to do these things on emotion.
Yes, I'm aware.
Anthony Rizzo. You put him in the Hall of Fame now. He's been with the Yankee a year. I love him. He's in. He's in.
I would probably go, yeah, just because not necessarily with the Yankees, but more what he did with the Cubs.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
But he's borderline.
Who's that kid you guys brought? Cabrera? Played right field for you?
Melky Cabrera?
No. Played right field for you this year.
Oh, it was Waldo Cabrera.
Waldo Cabrera.
Yeah.
You'd put him in.
No. Yeah, no, not
Oh,
yet.
no, come on, you would. Yeah, come on.
He's got a lot of potential, but not yet, no.
Oh, come on. You do it in a heartbeat.
Hey, I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy.
Hey, come on. You know? The guy you traded, if you hadn't traded the pitcher to the Cardinals, you'd have put him in, Montgomery.
Yeah, no.
I'm telling you, if 2 more good years and I'm voting. Right? You're sitting there like going, he voted for 10 Yankees on the ballot. Wow. He left out Adrian Beltre so he could vote for Jeff Montgomery. And Scott Brocious. He's a scary guy. And Roy White.
When car repairs get difficult,
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
we get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Open 7 till 4, Monday through Friday. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6, Monday through Friday, Saturday, 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.